What's going on YouTube? This is FineOK, and today I'm bringing you guys an updated video on how to rotate as a solo laner. The first video I made on this I think is a little bit outdated. It relied a lot on teleport being able to be used on wards, which was a thing back then. Still a thing, but you have to upgrade it now, but it's just a little bit different. And I just wanted to make a video that could transcend, I guess, all metas and stuff like that, just so everyone has an idea and a guideline of when they should be rotating, why they should be rotating in those situations, when it's better to just stay in lane, when it's best to, poke somebody out so that they can make rotations, stuff like that. I just want people to understand that fundamentally so that they don't have to worry about the meta changing and them having to change their playstyle and stuff. So, quick disclaimer before we get into this, and as the robot pushes the left lane all the way to the Titan and ends the game in 5 minutes, a quick disclaimer is that a lot of what comes with being able to rotate at the right times and being really smart with your rotations and stuff like that is just about experience and watching other people and learning from them. So if you watch my stream, watch my gameplays, you're going to learn a lot from that. If you watch this video and learn the tips and tricks that I'm going to talk about, that'll help. But even then, just practicing it and getting a feel for when these rotations are going to be most impactful and least harmful to your team's overall farming and stuff like that is going to be the best for you. So experience, very, very important, but like everything, there's some things you can learn that will definitely help you get there a little bit quicker. So that's what we'll talk about today. The first thing that I want to talk about is that being greedy with pushing your waves is the most important thing. So a lot of people get this misconception that they need to go help the team out, they need to impact the team, like, oh, my solo laner rotated and there's a wave here. Should I follow my solo laner or should I push the wave? Or should I push the wave and then follow my solo laner? Stuff like that. A lot of times people get confused and think just because the solo laner isn't here that they need to be wherever the other solo laner is, which I think is a bit of a misconception, and I also don't agree with. Pushing your wave is one of the most important things in Smite for any laner, for a solo laner, for a mid laner, for an ADC. I think for solo lane it's probably the most important because getting those little advantages over the enemy solo laner are actually a really big deal and can gain you a lot, especially in older metas. Not so much in this meta, but yeah. So basically what I'm saying is make sure that you're pushing your waves almost always. There's going to be some exceptions to this, which we'll talk about, but you just need to be greedy with it. So the reason for this is there's 30 seconds between each wave, so a wave spawns every 30 seconds. So if we kill this wave off, well, there's a wave already spawned because it was stacking up. So when this wave right here that's down in my tier 2 reaches the middle of the lane, another wave will spawn. It may be a little bit off because of the way they adjusted timers a while back to make it match mid lane, because it used to be so mid lanes minions would reach each other quicker than every other lane. So basically what I'm saying is that these reach right here, boom, another wave spawns, so that's 30 seconds in between every wave. So if you're playing a good clearing god, it's around 30 seconds, maybe a little bit less, where you're not going to have to worry about other minions being in the lane and reaching your tower. So this means that if you clear the wave really fast in lane, the first thing you should think about is rotating to the closest things near you. So you can rotate to a blue buff, maybe if it's spawning, you could rotate to a back camp if it's spawning, and at most you can rotate to these mid camps. But it may change in a different meta. You may be a little bit faster. So the guideline and the reason that I'm saying that is because it's the perfect amount of time for you to be able to get back to your lane and not have your wave push in their tower. Because if the enemy solo laner stays here, which is a good play a lot of the time, they can push the wave under tower, and that means it's a big net loss for your team, because not only are you losing a wave under tower, which means nobody's getting the XP or gold, the enemy solo laner got their wave in XP and gold, so they're going positive where you're going negative. So you have about 25-ish seconds on most gods, maybe a little bit less on slower clearing gods, and that's why pressure is so important, right? This idea of pressure is like it's kind of a out in the ether for some people. Maybe they probably don't even really know what it is. But basically what it means is that you either have kill pressure, which means that the enemy solo laner has to play back, or whatever lane for that matter, if you're talking about it, or you have clear pressure, which means that you're going to clear the wave fast, like so. I mean, it's not very realistic with my build and the timer and everything like that. But I clear the wave really fast, and now the enemy solo laner has to worry about their wave while I can do whatever I want. I can, at the least possible thing that I could do that would help me is just rotate into the jungle, and the enemy solo laner has to say enemy missing if he's in VGS, or if he's in comms, he has to say, okay, I don't know where he is, you gotta be careful. And all I could be doing is just sitting here and waiting for the next wave. So be greedy with your waves, make sure that you're pushing them, because you don't want to be losing them to tower. And like I said before, a lot of times people think that just because the enemy soul laner is missing, that they need to make sure that they're like following them around the map. But a lot of times this is the best time to gain pressure in the lane. Make sure that your wave is pushed. If they're like over at a team fight and you don't think that you can make it in time to be impactful, then a lot of times it's best to just keep pushing your lane. So in a scenario like that, you could go in proxy, and I'll talk a little bit more about proxying coming up next. Oh my goodness, this Ra is literally at my Titan. Okay, I'm gonna have to cut the clip and restart this game. So we're gonna talk a little bit about proxying and why staying in lanes can sometimes be better for you overall. So a couple exceptions to that guideline of about having like 25 seconds to make an impact across the map until your next wave is there and requiring you to push it is there's a couple things. So imagine that your enemy solo isn't in lane, maybe they just backed. Now that means, or maybe they're just like doing something else on the map. Maybe they're going for their back camps, or they're maybe they're rotating to something and nothing's really going on over there, and you can like recognize that. This means that the waves will be meeting and they'll be killing each other off, but nobody's getting the XP or gold if you aren't at the lane, like you yourself aren't in the lane, which means that it's not as bad of a loss because they aren't gaining something positive over it as far as XP and gold. It's just it's neutral. It's a neutral gain and loss for each team. So this means that you have a little bit more time to do other things on the map. So basically what I'm saying is that if you're rotating to something else, maybe you have pushed your wave recently and you're looking to maybe come gank mid because they're playing really aggressive in mid and you know that you can get a fight going and you can definitely get kills off of it. If the enemy solo isn't in lane, this gives you a little bit more time to try and make that play, and you just have to recognize that on the map when you're already in the jungle or when you are originally living in the lane. Or maybe you force them to back recently, which allows you to rotate out of lane and not have to worry about pushing your wave as much because they won't be pushing the wave in their favor as well. So that's one exception to the rule. Another exception, and I briefly mentioned it before, and I've talked about it a ton, is proxying. It's one of the best plays you can make in the highest level play. Not the highest level play, but it's one of the things that separates amateurs from lower level players is that proxying, because we talked about how you have about 25 seconds, 30 seconds to make that impact or maybe rotate and try and do something around the map. Proxying gives you more time because what you're doing is you're pushing the wave about 10-15 seconds faster than you would have pushed it had you pushed it when the waves had met. So what I mean by that is since I push it back here, proxying, all this means, I didn't really explain it, is pushing the wave behind where the waves are supposed to meet. That's all that really means. So now it's been about 5 seconds, maybe 7 seconds, and then I'm still waiting. The waves haven't met yet. Probably 10-15 seconds before these waves actually meet. Probably around 50 seconds because it's halfway up the lane. And then boom, the next wave spawns. So that's about 45 seconds if you clear the wave instantly. I mean, it's not very realistic, but maybe it's a little bit less if you have a fast clearing god. Where if I proxy the wave back here, I now have 45 seconds, a window to make this rotation before the next wave meets, and I have to worry about pushing it again. So that just gives me more time to do other things on the map. That means I can rotate into mid. Obviously, maybe I can push the wave if my mid is rotating a duo or something like that. If I'm being really greedy, which I love to do, but I can start a fight in mid if that's a thing. I have 45 seconds. Maybe there's a red buff fight or a fight around these mid camps, over these mid camps. Or maybe I'm just looking to do a buff because I see that the enemy jungler is on the other side of the map and I know that like speed spawning, or I know back camps are spawning or something like that. It just gives me a lot more time to make decisions and make an impact across the map. And one of the best ways to proxy, especially for you newer players who are trying to learn and aren't as comfortable with, possibly the jungler comes over and ganks me, because you are a lot more susceptible to getting ganked here and being killed when you're playing this far up. You're literally on the enemy side of the map. You're behind their towers. The only way out for you really is to either go through this path or go through the tower, which most of the time will not have minions in it. Well, sometimes will, but you're pretty susceptible to a gank pack here. So one of the best ways to make sure that you're able to do this is to ward back camps. If the map changes or the meta changes, just ward a very hot path for the enemy jungler or the enemy mid laner, or whoever is going to be coming to gank you. So in this meta, in this map, it's these back camps. So you get the timer on those and you know when they're there. But you can also, usually as the solo laner, you're just going to be warding these the back camps in blue if you're looking to make really aggressive proxy rotations, because not only we get the timer on blue and back camps, which allows you to have more options when you want to rotate out of lane, it means you can come to these back camps, and that could be the only thing you do. Maybe you proxy and you don't really see anything going on in mid, the speed's not up, nothing for you to really do. Everyone's playing super safe. You just rotate to these back camps, steal them, make sure you get the timer on them. Obviously, if you steal them, you'll get the timer on them. And then you come back to lane, and both of these wards are just going to give you more options to do things when you rotate out of lane, and it's going to help you be a lot more comfortable. You can also place the ward like around here so that you catch this path, as well as the back camps. It just won't quite get the timer possibly, but basically what I'm saying is that it will catch the path of enemy junglers so that you can play a little bit more aggressive. And you know, if your mid lane is warding, if your dual lane is warding, a lot of times you're going to be able to catch that jungler's path anyway. However, this doesn't mean just be completely ignorant and absurd with your proxying. Don't just literally walk to the tier 2 if you see that the enemy jungler is on their back camps, because you know, more than likely, if it's a smart jungler or a good jungler, he's just going to walk over, and then the solo laner is going to come to you and they're going to try and kill you. So just keep an eye on the map. Make sure you keep an eye on where the enemy jungler is. If he's in mid lane or walking towards like duo or around there, then maybe you can look for this rotation. And at the worst, he comes over and he kills you. But even then, it's kind of a hassle for the jungler to do that a lot of the time, because he has to come all the way over here on this side of the map. He has to go to his side of the map to kill somebody. And if you had pushed the wave to begin with, you already got the XP and gold that you were looking for. Yeah, that's like 30 seconds, depending on what time in the game you die, where you're not going to be able to farm and stuff. But it just, your wave is already pushed. You don't have to worry about them pushing your tower or anything like that. And, you know, if everyone else stays safe on the map and, you know, they don't literally kill you and then rotate all the way over to Gold Fury, which is never going to happen then, unless the map changes, the meta changes. Like, as long as they can't get a big objective off of it, and your blue buff and your buffs are secured and stuff like that, it's really not that big of a deal a lot of the time. So you should mess around and experiment with your proxies and see what you can do. Because the first point that I said, and most important thing I said, was being greedy with your waves. Well, this is one of the best ways that you can be greedy with your wave while also being able to rotate around the map. So that's why it's such a big key point, and something that you definitely need to learn in order to become a better solo laner. So the same thing, the same concept of having a certain amount of time, a window to rotate out of lane, applies to doing things on your own side of the map. So let's say I push the wave in lane. It's kind of stacked a little bit, so let's say I have a pretty good clearing gone and I push the wave. I can also just rotate to my side of the map, try and get things done. Maybe I just need to do my blue buff and then go back to lane, or I can maybe look for the back camps because my jungler isn't really keeping up with them, or just is on the other side of the map. It's still farm that needs to be had, and it's still a good overall gain for your team. So coming to do these and then going back to lane is definitely an option. Maybe you can look to go to those mid camps. Maybe at the worst, the most extreme, they're invading your speed buff because your enemy or your teammates are losing in mid and jungle. So you can rotate to that if you push the wave pretty quickly and that you see that they're going to do that in advance. And you can make an impact there, and maybe it will help your mid and jungle get back into the game, and it can maybe even win you the game. So there's always things you can do in impact as a solo laner, especially with rotations across the map. It maybe not be as big of a deal and as crazy as it used to be as far as how much ahead you can get as a solo laner and how much you can carry a game, but it's still definitely a thing you can do and definitely help out with your team. However, this does not mean that you should be rotating out of lane every time you push the wave, and I'm not trying to say that at all. And that's something that's going to come with experience and learning the game and getting a feel for it. However, it's still very, pretty much the most important thing in solo is trading with enemy solo and 1v1ing them and trying to gain an advantage, trying to kill them all the time. However, the best way to know that you can look for this rotation is if the enemy solo is sitting under their tower, they're just playing super far back, there's not a lot of potential for you to, 1v1 them, and they're just not giving it to you. So if they're playing like that, or you're just owning them so hard that you're consistently poking them out and they can't really do anything, then try and, transition that advantage and that win that you're gaining in lane, even if it's them just giving it to you, just giving it up. Try and transition that into other things, whether it's blue buff invades, back camp invades, rotations to mid, rotations to Gold Fury if you're able to proxy a wave and make sure that your waves are really far pushed. Stuff like that is things you got to be on the lookout for. And one of the key ways to realize if you're rotating too much, if you're not being greedy with your wave pushes like I talked about, is if you had gained a lead, say you had a lead on the enemy solo, you had a bit of a gold, say a 500 gold lead, you had like a 1.5 level lead, maybe a 2 level lead. These micro advantages that are important. One of the ways you can figure out that if you're rotating a little bit too much is if they're gaining that back, that deficit is quickly closing because they're pushing all of their waves, whereas you are not. Because it's very, very easy for somebody who is behind to just sit in lane and permanently push their wave and just PvE, because it allows them to get the farm that they need in order to get back to the game. And if you are a little bit sketchy with not pushing your waves, it's going to help them a lot to get back in the game. So just make sure that you're trying to use those windows to your advantage, but also worrying about pushing your waves. Also, one big thing that people talk about is once the tower is killed, do I just start rotating? Should I never come back to my lane? It's a little bit different because you have a little bit more time to rotate because the waves aren't usually meeting in the middle of the lane anymore. And they're a bit farther up on the map. So basically you're having to proxy every wave that you push, which puts you in a little bit more of a precarious spot. So it gives you a little bit more time and a little bit more opportunity to rotate. So yes, you should be rotating definitely more when the enemy tier 1 is down, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be pushing your waves at all. You just have to keep an eye on where the minions are on the map. If they get closer to your side of the map, make sure you go and push that, maybe push 2 waves and then go back and look for rotations to mid or wherever on the map. So yeah, and the last but not least, I'm going to talk about rotating to Gold Fury and big team fights on duo side of the map. So this last concept is a little bit more difficult to explain because most of it just comes with experience and learning and getting a feel, like I talked about, for exactly how you're going to make this rotation and if it's going to be impactful or not. That's the most important thing. Whether or not this rotation that you're going to make from solo lane all the way to either like a Gold Fury fight or like a fight at a red buff, or maybe just like all the way a fight at duo lane. A lot of times that happens where it's just like a random 5v5 in duo lane. Something that's going to take time for you to learn is just whether or not that's going to be more positive for you and your team overall over making sure that your wave is pushed and that your enemy, what if your enemy solo laner stays in lane and pushes it all the way to tower? Maybe he gets a back camp and maybe he, steals a blue buff, or maybe, like I said, he gets the tower or something. That's still a lot of gold for the enemy team and a lot of map pressure, a lot of time where if you don't go and push that wave, it's even more pressure to get towards the tier 2 and stuff like that. There's definitely things they can get from not rotating, especially the enemy solo laner. So what you have to keep in mind, and it's basically like a little formula equation in your head, is whether or not you're going to get enough kills where it's going to be worth it. Maybe you can get an objective off of it. Maybe you have a late game team comp and your duo lane, if you get them a little bit ahead, it's going to really like propel you into that those later stages of the game. Maybe you have such a lead, you have like a 2-3 level lead, that if you make this rotation and sacrifice maybe a little bit of your XP and gold, that you'll be able to gain things for your team who are maybe a little bit behind to get you back in the game, or maybe they're a little bit ahead. Everyone is ahead on the map, and you can sacrifice the little bit of a lead that you have so that you can gain something over here. Maybe you're playing a god that can, like Thor. I don't know if you're gonna be playing a solo, but just somebody that has an easy rotation over. So once you have that wave pushed, you come over and you can maybe look for like a global ult to come and clean up and stuff like that. So a lot of what this has to do with in rotating over to Gold Fury. There's still a window. You don't want to be over on this side of the map for the rest of the game, right? You still want to go back to solo and push it, but you have a little bit more time. You're committing a lot more time, especially when you make this rotation over to Gold Fury and stuff, knowing that you're going to be over here a little bit longer and that hopefully you'll be gaining something more positive out of it. Because let's say that you make this rotation and you're trying to make a fight start to happen at Gold Fury or something, you don't get any kills from it, you can't really pull an objective, and the entire time the lead that you had in solo is just gone because the enemy solo stayed there and pushed 2 or 3 waves, maybe got like a back camp or something while you were doing nothing, which is something that you don't want to happen. So like I said, it's just something that has to come with experience and playing the game perfectly and playing it well, so that if you come over and make this rotation, having the mechanical skill, knowing that with your lead as a solo laner that you'll be able to make a fight happen, or that you'll be able to kill someone like a mage or like an ADC or something, just with your raw skill and your mechanical skill and stuff like that. So this is more of an abstract thing, and it's just something you definitely have to practice and get a feel for, like I said, and I keep saying, but it's just the most important thing when it comes to that. But proxying is still one of the best ways for you to make this rotation. If you're a really aggressive player and you're really comfortable, you can proxy right here, and you can even, rotate over, look for these back camps, keep an eye for where the jungler is on the map, and you can rotate over and go through here and look to fight at red buff, because a lot of times the enemies are going to be retreating back through their red buff and stuff like that. You can cut them off and make plays and make cleanup happen over here. If not, you can rotate through mid, and a lot of times when you're a solo laner and there's like a fight happening at gold and you have to be there, your mid laner is already going to be there, so there's going to be a mid wave meeting. So this is one of the best ways for you to not really get behind the enemy solo laner if they stayed in solo while you made this rotation, is you can push the mid wave and then rotate into Gold Fury. And if your mid laner is smart, or is already there and doesn't really have a choice, he's going to be perfectly fine with you pushing that mid wave, because if the enemy mid laner doesn't push it and is already at the fight, then you have a wave going under tower. And it just allows you to make sure that you're getting an overall positive win for your team while you're pushing your waves and you're still looking for this fight. So a lot of time it's you're just like the cleanup dude. Not only are you cleaning up the waves as you're making this rotation, making sure the mid wave is pushed as you're coming over to Gold Fury, but you're also the cleanup when it comes to kills. Because if a fight already happened and you're making this rotation, your team is not entrusting with you because you're making this choice individually to make this rotation and try and make an impact, but you're entrusting yourself that you're going to be able to clean up some of these kills that already happened from the start of this fight, or that you're going to initiate in the middle of the fight and make things happen and make an impactful rotation. But like I said, you don't want to be over there for too long, so you definitely want to get towards your side of the map, especially if the waves start to get pushing towards your tier 2, like say the enemy solo stays and gets your tower. As long as you get some kills, maybe objective off it, then it's definitely going to be worth it. And there's some other things that you should keep in mind, other variables like what the team comps are like. Like say they have a really heavy early game team comp and you have a lead in your lane and the rest of your team is kind of late game. I kind of already mentioned this, but like use your lead to make sure that your late game gods can get towards that mid game a little bit quicker and help them out. Or maybe it's like a last ditch effort, like you guys are losing super hard, you're doing at least okay in lane, maybe you're not doing great, but there's a Gold Fury fight and you want to make sure, you want to make something happen, or if somebody's actives are down and you know that and you want to go on that certain character, so you're immediately starting the fight and making a fight happen around Gold Fury or something like that, then that's just something that you have to do. So there's just so many variables and so many things that you could talk about, but the key thing that you need to practice and keep in mind when you're making these rotations is whether or not this rotation is going to gain something for your team, and a positive. It's going to be a net positive for you over the fact that if the enemy solo laner doesn't rotate and stays in lane, which on the contrary sorry, I'm talking a lot here, but on the contrary, it can sometimes be better for you to just stay in lane and push it, maybe push to a tower, try and look for the backhand, try and look for invades, and making sure that your team knows that you're not going to come. Say, like maybe even type to them, I'm not rotating, or tell them comms, or just say enemy missing, I'll attack right lane, just say that you're trying to split push. And this is a way for you to get back in the lane and get back in a game, and just allow you to play it off the advantage that they're not pushing their waves. You can push the waves, look for back camps, make sure your team isn't dying, because if they're getting kills off the rotation, like I said, it's going to be more impactful in that way. So kills are important, objectives are important, just making sure that you can get those if you make rotation. If you don't make a rotation, make sure that the enemy team can't get those when you're not there. So that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know I talked a lot about this, but if you follow the 3 key guidelines, 3 key points, and follow that window that I talked about of being able to rotate, I'm gonna go kill it Sobek. No, he's full tank. GG. But if you follow those guidelines and really look to make those rotations, if you're making rotation in that window, and make sure that you're being greedy with your waves and everything like that, I think you're gonna quickly learn and get a feel for how to rotate and how to be most impactful as a solo laner. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys enjoyed the video, if you like Smite and other content and learning about the game and learning specifically solo lane, then feel free to leave a like on this video and subscribe to my channel, because I do make a lot of videos with that kind of stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Have a great rest of your day. Peace out.